Liberal MP Pam Damoff on her decision not to seek re-election, citing the increased toxicity she's facing in politics. And she's not alone. In recent weeks, we've heard from municipal politicians getting out of the game, citing shocking threats, in their words, and an increasingly toxic environment. Just how real is this workplace shift for the country's elected officials? And does it risk the retention and attraction of future leaders? Let's bring back three people who will know a lot about what it's like to be in politics: Christy Clark, John Tory, and Tom Mulcair. Christy, I'll start with you. We have at times talked about sort of how toxic things are online and the effect that has on kind of luring people to come and serve in public office. What is your take on what we just heard from Pam Damoff and the fact that people are actually like, I'm done with it, I'm leaving, it's not worth it?
And Vassy, I'll let my two esteemed colleagues speak about the other half of the population here, but I want to just focus on what it feels like for women in politics. And huge applause for Pam for having the courage to say this is why she was leaving, because it doesn't make it easier for her to leave by saying, by calling out all the trolls out there, because they just go after her harder. I have spent my entire adult life trying to talk women into getting into politics, and it's always really hard, because there's a million things that other women have to do and kind of look after in life, mostly for free. When social media became, became part of the equation, it made it 1,000 times harder for women to get in, because women are judged by completely different standards than men. The way a woman looks, a picture of her not smiling, has she gained weight, what is she wearing, what about that ugly voice she has, it's too high, I can barely listen to it. Like, it's nonstop a level of criticism leveled at women that men also don't receive. And so, men get a lot of criticism, but boy, I can say it's a lot harder for women. And if we don't try and do something about this, I worry that we won't have very many women who want to go into politics at all. And if we don't have 50% of women around the table making decisions, our country is going to be far, far worse off, because our perspective, whether it's left or right, is different from men's.
That is certainly true. It is. Tom, I thought that the time frame that Ms. Damoff referenced was really interesting too, right? It's such a palpable difference just over the last 9 years that it led her to the decision she did make. Is it your observation that things are much different even now compared to 9 years ago?
Yeah, despite efforts to calm things down in the House, you still get events like this week, but because they've become the exception, they get noticed more. But I think that the heckling in the House of Commons has diminished somewhat, but it tends today still to be directed more towards women, especially during question period when a woman's asking a question. And I've gotten a chance to know Pam Damoff, and I can honestly say that she is exactly the type of good person you want in politics. That goes to your initial question, Vassy, about attracting and retaining good people. Mm-hmm. It used to be something that people aspired to. Now, when you look at what's happening, as you say, with social media, the instant criticism and the trolls are coming out of their computers now, and it's being felt particularly in municipal politics. In my home province, in Quebec, 25% of the people who we do one shotgun, all municipalities on the same day. That was 2.5 years ago. 25% of the people elected 2.5 years ago have quit. Mostly young women were elected as mayor. It was an incredible cohort. Lots and lots of young women were elected. And you just got mayors dropping it and just saying, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. The insults, it's so personal. I feel insecure for my safety and that of my family. And the authorities, especially the police authorities, but also prosecutors, are going to have to figure out how to start dealing with this. Because if this is the backbone of our democracy, as elected officials at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels, and you've got to protect them. And Damoff is I think, in very posed tones, sounding an alarm that we've all got to understand is important.
I think also what she flagged that we have seen play out in the last number of months, John, is it migrating even from the online space, actually more than months, right, over the past few years. There are politicians' homes, for example, over what's happening in the Middle East that are being protested, like their actual houses, not just being called out online or sent threatening emails. Like it's in the real world as well.
Well, two things about that. First of all, I remember sitting in a premier's office like 45 years ago, opening mail. And so the job I had at a young age, and there's these handwritten letters, and people would be angry about things, but they would express themselves in a certain way, and you kind of knew what they said. And today, you get these emails that have like 25 words in capital letters, 58 exclamation marks, and 3 F-bombs. And this is the way people communicate with politicians, where what they could say is, no, I just disagree with what you're doing. Could you, give me a call, or could you explain why, or whatever. But on the other subject of the protests, I mean, I faced the same thing. And, it was to the point, I live in a condo, so they protested outside my condo every week, more than once a week sometimes, and caused my neighbors, for example, leaving aside my own family, caused my neighbors not to be able to go outside of their condos. And in fact, some of them in the building even suggested I should move. I'm not sure where they thought I should move to, but this is beyond control. Look at Arif Virani this week saying, my wife and kids, when I'm off in Ottawa being the Justice Minister, should not be subject to people standing in front of my house shouting, let alone the neighbors. And so it's just, she's right. I mean, and I applaud her for speaking up on it. I talked to 2 people this week who said they would sort of be interested in running, but they're not. And when they name, it isn't the pay, it isn't where it is in Ottawa or anywhere else, it's the environment that they just said, I don't want to be any part of that.
I mean, we're not going to solve the whole problem here, but Christy, is there anything that you think would work to address it at this point? Because I don't think any of us want to see that be the case. Good people not want to run.
I don't have a quick answer for that, Vassy. It's so difficult for men and women who of character, who don't want to be treated like garbage when they're really trying to do the best for their country. I do think, though, the people who want the best for this country, I mean, all 4 of us here tonight, we should be working really hard to try and get those people to run for office, even if they know it's going to be really hard. Because if we just leave it to the trolls, they will win, because good people will refuse to run. And so, I think Tom and John and I are all committed to making sure that we continue to encourage people to run, because if we don't have them there, it won't get better.
Do you think, Tom, that if you were thinking about going into politics now, you still would?
I guess it depends on the nature of each person. I had always wanted to try to remove inequality in our society. It's something that was built in from an early age, both from my very large family and by my religious upbringing. And so, yeah, I was drawn to it. I don't know if I would go into it today, because I'd be paying a lot more attention than I actually do to social media, because I don't pay a lot of attention to social media. But it's a much tougher world out there. But as I'm listening to Christy and to John, I'm wondering if there's not a role for those of us who have left politics, who will not appear to be whining about something. We don't have a personal axe to grind, but maybe we could and should collectively be playing a more active role in trying to help those who are currently practicing the art of politics. I think that might be something that we could do that would be helpful. We have to be creative about finding solutions to a problem that's never existed before.